Am I a spoodle? Am I a cockapoo or one of those spoodles? Either way, I've got oodles and oodles of energy. I bounce off the walls, literally. I don't care if I fall. Am I a cockapoo or am I a spoodle? Do I know how to make use of my noodle? Maybe not, but I'm heaps of fun. Turn me over and tickle my tum. Am I a spoodle or am I a cockapoo? Wherever you're going, can I come along too? I want to go outside and race all over the place. Can I make you feel guilty by the look on my face? Am I a cockapoo or am I a spoodle? Am I a female or have I got a doodle? These are the questions. Have you got the answer? I don't know much, but I'm one very nimble dancer. Amphibious, amphibian. The frog. I'm an amphibious amphibian, breathing and drinking through my skin, shedding it on a regular basis, always staying near my favourite oasis. My nostrils and mouth I shut tight and squeeze my lungs so that I might blow up my sack and join in the choir. Some of us sing low, some of us sing higher. The colour of my skin can match my surrounds so that you won't even know I'm around. Sometimes I'm brown and sometimes I'm green, camouflaged so well that I can't be seen. Brandy. Brandy is a beagle. I've said a lot already. When you eat a tasty morsel, she can hold your gaze quite steady. Her eyes plead quite insistently. She only wants a little taste, even if it's just a fallen crumb that otherwise would have gone to waste. Once you give her her heart's desire, do you think that will stop her yearn? If you responded in the affirmative, then you still have much to learn. She can smell a muffin from miles and miles away. Leave it unguarded for a second, and she thinks to herself, "Olé!" And when you return from your very brief jaunt, she will look up at you most innocently. Her dark brown eyes will stare at you. Not a single crumb in the vicinity. If she walks by a great big dog, she doesn't say a single word until she's safely passed it by. Then she barks like you have never heard. Teaching her how to use the dog flap does not always go as planned. You know that food will do the trick, but remember, brandy is not bland. You place her gently outside the door. Then, as you bend down to place the food, her head bursts through, ears all askew. Oddly enough, she's in a hungry mood. Her excitement when going on a walk cannot be surpassed. She may be greedy and disobedient, but she is a lovely little lass. Brassed off. Sally bought a toothbrush holder made from gleaming brass, solid, smooth and golden. It was really class. But she was loath to spend long, dreary hours buffing and shining it after hefty scours. So she rejoiced to learn that the brass could be sprayed with a film of plastic. She was amazed and rushed off down to the nearest hardware store to purchase the plastic that would eliminate the chore. She searched high and low on every shelf, but thought, "I'll never find it by myself." so queried a young assistant wandering around as to where this can of plastic could be found. She asked, "Do you sell the stuff you spray on brass?" He blushed. "No, we don't," and spun away fast. She thought his reaction rather strange, but just kept looking through the wide product range, until eventually triumphant, the elusive can she spotted, and deciding she'd tell that young assistant to get knotted, strode up to him with the can in her hand, saying, "You told me you don't sell this, an explanation I demand." He mumbled rather sheepishly, "I thought you said something else. I thought you were looking for another product on the shelf." "And what might that be, if it weren't stuff to spray on brass?" He replied, "I thought you were looking for some spray on bras." Bronwyn's birthday. It's Bronwyn's birthday today. Her age is upped a notch. Well, that's okay, as long as on her wrinkles you don't keep watch. The spider veins, liver spots, grey hairs poking through. Signs that on this earth, Bronwyn is not so new. She's been around a bit, done childhood and all that stuff. Now she's not exactly old, and I wouldn't say her meat is tough. She could probably still dance all night if that would take her fancy, but she doesn't, because her hip and knee, well, they are a little chancy. Still cook a delicious meal she can and wash up all the dishes, although I'm not so sure that it's one of her greatest wishes. Sat up cosy reading a great book, now we're getting closer. So I just hope that the rest of her life she makes the very moster. Buying lunch. I might go out for some lunch, was the thought in Bill's head. I'll ask if anyone wants a meat patty on bread. Lucy in accounts asked if he'd kindly buy a cheeseburger, large Coke and small packet of fries. He strode up to the counter to order this meal, but was confronted with a question which made his head reel. "Do you have a senior citizen's card?" the young girl asked. "No, I don't," he replied, and looked at her askance. The manager, half-grown herself, a problem she perceived. The customer of his embarrassment she wanted to relieve. So she stage-whispered out loud and clear, "Don't ask them if they have a card, the poor dears. They don't like it if you ask them, even if their hair's grey. It's better not to ask, 'cause you'll only turn them away. They may look ancient, moth-eaten and fossilised, but don't ask, 'cause you'll only see the hurt in their eyes." Bill related this story to a friend of middling years, which only served to give her an additional fear. If served by a young boy, she wouldn't feel flattered. If the burger was 10% off, in fact, she'd be shattered. Karma, 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 not a lion. If you're too young or too old, it is a play on the 80s song title, Karma, 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 Chameleon. My father is a camel and my mother is a llama. And that is how I was born, a hybrid called a karma. Created through the procedure of artificial insemination, not via a camel-llama eyelash-fluttering flirtation. My father most probably would have squashed my mother flat if they'd tried the common method of breeding a little brat. He's a dromedary camel with a hump of fatty tissue. Half a ton of him would have caused my llama mama issues. Humans love my llama wool and my llama disposition, and to have me camel size would be a wondrous acquisition. 74 chromosomes are present in both my papa and my mama, so I am a fertile hybrid who can make little baby karmas. I'm not sure of my future, if I'll just be a weird exhibit, if the journey of my hybrid is only a fleeting visit. But I'll do my very best to grow big and strong and woolly, so that the good traits from my parents can be enjoyed fully. Changing the daily backup tapes. Flash your pass at the sensor and it responds with a blue flashing light and 2 beeps, one short, one long. Drag open the door and enter a cold chamber. This is the world of the backup ranger. Humming and buzzing, droning and rumbling, these machines work amidst much grumbling. The normal procedure is to walk to the back, pull out the first little tape. It's called a DAT. Then put it away in its hard plastic case and eject the next from its overnight place by pressing a button for it to unload. It also must leave its transient abode. Then comes the time for the humongous whopper, containing slots by the 100 inside its hopper. Slide open the door and all will be laid bare. How many tapes it's released from its snare. Encase them all in their hard plastic shells and take them off-site for a well-deserved spell, until once again they must be placed in their drives. Thus is the rhythm of the backup tapes' lives. Disobedient Disobedience. Parody of Disobedience by A. Milne. Charles Harrison Darrowby Borg Capri looked great in his striped bathers, though he weighed 133. Charles put on his bathers he wore he. He'd never drown, playing the clown, frolicking in the sea. Charles Harrison's bathers were very well renowned. Charles Harrison's bathers were recognised all over town. Charles Harrison's bathers were whispered about, were they? They barely covered his bum and none of his tum. Little to the imagination did they convey. John King put up a notice, lost or stolen or strayed. Charles Harrison's bathers seem to have been mislaid. Last seen slithering slowly, quite of their own accord. Down his bum, away from his tum, 40 shillings reward. Charles Harrison, commonly known as Chuck, told his other relations he'd just spend a couple of bucks. Charles bought himself new bathers he bought he. He'd never drown, playing the clown, frolicking by the sea. Charles Harrison's bathers haven't been heard of since. John King said he was sorry, so did Queen and Prince. John King, somebody told me, said to a man he knew, if people wear bathers with loose elastic, well, what can anyone do? Charles Harrison Darrowby Borg Capri looked great in his striped bathers, though he weighed 133. Charles put on his bathers he wore he. He'd never drown, playing the clown, frolicking by the sea. Dust. The ship in a bottle brought back from Bristol. The vase filled with flowers made of finest crystal. Wedding photographs of children proudly displayed. Souvenirs of wood and iron, some made of green jade. They may look very innocent sitting quietly on the shelves, but you didn't know that they just cannot help themselves. Just as a dog will roll in an object too disgusting to contemplate, these inanimate beings also cannot wait to cover themselves completely in a film so very fine, of dust. Oh, and don't forget those many bottles of wine. And don't forget the CDs, the videos and books. If you don't dust them, you'll get the mother-in-law's look. Who would have thought such pretty things could chain us to a rag? A rare few may enjoy dusting, but I think it's a drag. It wouldn't be so bad that if when you finished, this was the end. But you know that come next week, it starts all over again. Even if your life is hard, even if your face is scarred, even if the road is rough, even if your meat is tough, even if your friends aren't true, even if you feel so blue, even if you are confused, even if you always lose. Find some laughter in the pain, chortle through the endless rain. Don't be afraid to laugh about your constant feeling of self-doubt. You can endlessly be amused by the fact you always lose, and then you'll never lose again. You forged gold ingots from the pain. First job. I'll drive you to the shopping centre, Sandy's grandma offered. Sandy gladly accepted the proposition her gran proffered. I'll just wait in the car, said Gran, while you go in and inquire about a job in those shops. Surely someone will hire. Nervously, Sandy entered the big supermarket and walked through until a wooden shutter labelled office came into view. Tentatively she knocked, and up it was raised, revealing a lady who looked in the midst of her menstrual phase. Excuse me, but I was wondering if you had any positions. No, we don't. Down came the shutter. End of her mission. Reluctantly she tried the smaller shops without any success, and returned to her gran in the car, rather distressed. I didn't get a job, she sadly explained, feeling low. Well, I got you an interview at the supermarket, her gran crowed. But I knocked on the shutter and was told no jobs by a lady quite cross. Oh, I walked straight past that and searched for the boss and chatted to him about Bob, my son, your uncle, who delivered bread to this supermarket daily, was what her gran said. And it was obvious that her grandmother was a real pro, because she knew that sometimes it was all about who you know. Gallbladder removal. The doctor advised Lee's gallbladder must be removed. A few simple snips, and his health would be improved. She told him to sign up for a cholecystectomy laparoscopic. 4 incisions are sliced, for surgery microscopic. First, they'd inflate his abdominal cavity with CO2. Then they'd get out their telescopes for a fantastic view of his gallbladder, bile duct, cystic duct and liver. Cut free his gallbladder and through an incision deliver this organ, already emptied of its painful stones, so we'd be hearing less of Lee's whimpering moans. We wish him good luck. They say the risk is very low, and we'll see his smiling face soon with a healthier glow. IBS. They call it irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, where your mind says no, but your bowels say yes. Or your mind says yes, but your bowels say no, no matter how desperately you'd really like to go. They can never agree on the most natural of functions, even if you've munched on fibre for breakfast, tea and luncheon, gagged on castor oil, retched on Epsom salts. That's disgusting. Your bowels, unequivocally, have come to a grinding halt. And they will lie dormant in a state of hibernation, waiting patiently until you are in a particular location, where a toilet is at a distance far, far away. Then they'll come alive without a moment's delay. They've woken up quite grumpy, impatient and demanding. The distance of the toilet, of that they have no understanding. Evacuate! Evacuate! Evacuate now! It's up to you to work out where and how. I could pretend I'm going into that pub to buy a beer, slink slyly past the barman and head straight for the rear. Or, while driving in the car, spot a clump of trees, hide behind them and feel the open breeze. They call it irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. The more you want to go, your bowels want to less. The less you want to go, your bowels want to more. And that, my friends, is the spastic colon war. In the garden. The air was alpine fresh and the lake surface glistening. Birdsong trilled for those who were listening. What a great afternoon, thought Glenn, feeling chipper. A perfect moment to start up his new whippersnipper. It purred smoothly in his experienced hands, trimmed edges effortlessly at the most gentle command. But while promenading proudly around his neat lawn, Glenn spied a dog poo, and he wanted it gone. It looked dry as dust, so he thought he'd attack with his fearless whippersnipper, just give it a smack, and it would harmlessly splinter and shatter. But it was still moist, so it splished and splattered. It splattered with power. It splattered with grace. It splattered all over Glenn's spluttering face, flew up his nostrils, did not want to be wasted, left him a flavour, the worst he'd ever tasted. It splattered his t-shirt, it splattered his jeans. It was very much a poo-splishing, splattering scene. Poor Glenn hastily switched off the power and raced indoors for an emergency shower. Item 6. A bag of nothing. Next is item 6, a bag of nothing. Who'll give me an opening price? A bag of nothing sitting on your shelf would look rather nice. Come on, give me a bid. Oh, is that $5 I hear? But surely I can get more for this perfectly formed sphere. You won't get addicted to it, and it'll never give you a rash. In fact, this bag of nothing could save you a lot of cash. Your kids won't fight over it, and it doesn't gather dust. Can I say that this bag of nothing is an absolute must? Item 6 won't go out of fashion or lie broken on the floor. Is that $10 you're offering? I was hoping for a little more. Your neighbour cannot buy one that's got more power. It won't wilt or its petals fall off, as happens with flowers. Doesn't need to be filtered, chlorinated, skimmed or pumped. And it will never have to be carted off in a hired truck to the dump. $15 bid from the man over there called Sean. That lady in red's offering 20. Going, gone. Items on my desk. Do you want to know the items that sit on my desk? You do? Well, I'll list them and then give you a test. A pair of sunglasses, scissors, a cup and a phone. Some papers scattered over and a pen resting alone. Deep stuff this is, of which poems can be crafted. This precious information should not be merely shafted. The phone displays the word hold, goodbye and mute. The apple's already eaten, so I can't mention any fruit. On my desk is a rectangle of light, provided by the sun. Its shape changes over time as it makes its daily run. Unfortunately, the plant is only just surviving. I'd be lying if I said that it was green and thriving. A stick of glue sits there, used only once many weeks ago. Who knows? One day its importance will once again grow. A ruler, a phone book, and an ancient tape recorder ensure that this desk does not look in perfect order. Well, there you have it, the items on my desk. I haven't mentioned everything, I'll let you guess the rest. The spare RSI preventing mouse, a few little balls of fluff. Of course you knew them because they're typical desk stuff. It's all relative. My mother's brother's sister's name is Grace. She's my aunt and likes to go from place to place. My mother's sister's brother's name is Brad. He's my uncle and he is my cousin's dad. My grandmother on my mother's side is my maternal gran. She is my grandfather's bride. She also is my father's mother-in-law, and not surprisingly, they often go to war. My cousin is the nephew of my mother. His father happens to be my mother's brother. My auntie's niece is in fact myself. But if you're confused, well, don't look at me for help. Jiving in the jungle. Zulu was a zebra who loved zapping on his zither. Roger the rhinoceros rattled his rattler with raucous rigour. Leo, a leonine lion, loved to langoriously play his lute. And Flavia, the flaming flamingo, fluttered flirtatiously on her flute. These beasts were boldly bashing and belligerently banging. Cavorting capriciously, in clamorous chorus they were clanging. Deafening decibels were with deliberation being delivered. Surrounding shiny shimmering shrubs shuddered, shook and shivered. Bella, the blindingly bewitching butterfly, blithely blew on her bassoon. And Thomas, the odd-toed tapir, tooted a lively tune on his trombone. Ella Elephant elegantly and efficiently whirled her trunk, and Placido the platypus played a poolaloo with a pleasant plunk. But suddenly the strident symphony was silenced in a second. Bob, the boa constrictor, had drawn forth his baton as a weapon. Then through the still night air floated a pure sweet sound. Meerkat Molly mellifluously, melodiously and mellowly from her mound sang sorrowfully and sadly of a tale from a time long past, of a meerkat who met a meerkat, but their love, it didn't last. The members of the orchestra listened and they wept. But then they cranked it up again and started off from whence they'd left. Just rolling along. Driving along in her bread truck early one morn, with everything going exactly as norm. Margaret spied a lone wheel on the left trundling ahead. Turned to her brother. The newspaper he read. "Hey, look at this! Someone must have lost a wheel." Jack looked up quickly. It almost didn't seem real. Suddenly her truck swerved sharply to the right. She grabbed hold of the steering with all of her might. "Uh-oh, it's our wheel," she suddenly realised. Then saw a cyclist cycling towards her, very surprised at the sight of a lone wheel and a truck bearing down. He quickly decided to turn his bike around. But Margaret had problems of her own on which to ponder. The truck had veered off the road into the thick bush yonder. Jack's newspaper had slipped from right out of his hands. The news of the day abruptly seemed old and bland. Luckily, the truck stopped a paper's breadth from a huge tree. Although Margaret's fingers from the wheel she couldn't prise free. But she had to recover quickly, for a replacement truck soon arrived. And she and her brother continued on with their drive. 15 years later, Margaret was once again driving, the day after her husband had fixed up her brake's lining. When the familiar image of a lone wheel up ahead she sighted, so she quickly prepared to keep her car righted, while still keeping an eye on her adventuresome wheel, which crossed 3 lanes of traffic and homed into an automobile dealership at the top of a very steep drive. It spun around and settled, safe and alive. Margaret herself followed the same track of her errant wheel in order to bring it back. After she returned, a man kindly stopped his car to say, "Your wheel nuts have fallen off about 50 metres away." So she walked back to retrieve them, then reattached the wheel. She didn't see the need to make it a big deal. But when she got home, there was plenty to say to her husband, who had enlivened her day. "Oh no," he protested, "I turned those nuts tight. A thief must have come in the middle of the night to steal the wheel, but been disturbed halfway through. You know I never would have left those nuts askew." Latest gossip. Can someone please tell me? I'd like to know as well. What gossip a dog catches up on when around the place it smells. It sounds very interesting, spicy, the very latest in slanderous news, because dogs just can't wait to catch up on it. They want to hear the most recent reviews. If you let them loose from their confines, they'll rush to the nearest newsstand and sniff greedily at the tabloids in a language we just don't understand. I would love to be Dr. Dolittle, even if it were only for a day, because I could listen in as well and reply with shock, "Oh, I say!" Lemon pepper sauce. Lemon pepper sauce has a lemony peppery zing. It's a lemony peppery lemony saucy kind of thing. Made with lemon zest and peppercorns and garlic that's been pressed. Splash it on your salad so it's tantalizingly tastefully dressed. Lemon pepper sauce has a lemony peppery flavour. It has a lemony peppery lemony essence you can savour. Throw in chives or dill or mint. There isn't any law. Hugh Fernie Whittingstall adds a dash of pig's blood, raw. Lemon pepper sauce has a lemony peppery smell. It forms a lemony peppery lemony saucy kind of gel. If you've run out of shampoo and your hair is looking greasy, not a problem. Rub in the lemon pepper scrub, too easy. Lemon pepper sauce has a lemony peppery taste. It spawns a lemony peppery lemony saucy kind of baste. May I suggest you whip up a batch so it'll always be at hand? Or buy a bottle of my deluxe gourmet lemony peppery brand. Making plurals in English. The plural in English is usually made by adding an S, so don't be afraid of making this sound so that it can be heard at the end of the plural form of a word. Then there will be no doubt in anyone's mind whether your meaning is of the singular or plural kind. An extra syllable is needed when patch becomes patches, and take note that the plural of batch is batches. Of course, there are always exceptions to every rule. The fish that swim around in a school are still just fish. They don't become fishes, but the plural of dish will always be dishes. The plural of goose is, as we all know, geese, although the plural of moose is definitely not meese. One mouse, but a plague of them would be called mice, though to call houses heis is something for which I do not give advice. Hypothesis, in plural form, translates to hypotheses, and parenthesis, of course, becomes parentheses. But your garden variety of plurals, just add an S on. Next week, we'll talk about the S for possession. My name? The rainbow lorikeet, of course. There's no such thing as a nice shade of brown. I don't want a pastel or grey-coloured crown. Purple, that's more like it, and not in tones muted. Vivid orange and yellow is to what I'm much better suited. Less is more? What feather-brain uttered those words? A sparrow or wren, those dull, drab, speckled birds. I'm bright and I'm bold, decked out in every hue. Watch me in Technicolor. It's a spectacular view. Glimpse a flash of my feathers and you'll gasp in amazement. Get used to it. Pick your jaw off the pavement. I represent resplendently the entire colour spectrum. Take a photo. Why not? The charge? There is none. Our budgies. Our pretty budgies love to chatter. Oh, how they love a little natter. It's no good asking for some peace. They keep on talking, never cease. Maybe they're saying their name in Latin. Melopsittacus undulatus, they're chanting. Or possibly, how hot's the weather? And so wonderfully cooling to fluff their feathers. They may be talking of the crow outside and laughing at his big backside. Or simply rejoicing at being alive, to wake up early every morning at 5:30. Pegasus, the horse that winged it, or Sydney to Gosford via the scenic route. 7 passengers wanted to go as far as Gosford, 50 kilometres north, but somehow they ended up taking a much further course. The evening had not started well when their train was delayed. By 2 hours, already tempers were starting to fray. Our intrepid group were then herded onto a coach of the Pegasus line. This was the vehicle to which they were assigned. It wasn't until Newcastle appeared in the rearview mirror that they began wondering when they'd eat dinner. It seems the coach line was aptly named Pegasus the Winged Horse. Once its flight to Brisbane commenced, it couldn't change course. Even for a poor boy from a remand home who had a curfew, or an old pensioner couple who had to travel the dark night through. On the bus flew, hour after hour, their destination receding. The bus driver couldn't stop, no matter their begging or pleading. Monday morning found them staggering out, 900 kilometres further north than planned, and told to make their own way back. Railcorp wasn't going to lend a hand. Put it in the bad poem section. I've been told to write a really bad poem. It goes against the grain, but sometimes you gotta show 'em that you can write the baddest of bad. In the bad poem section, you've got something to add. Now, normally my poems perfectly rhyme and flow. They dance and they sing. A line would never end in apropos. They're deep, so very deep, that their bottom has never been found. In the deep and meaningful section is where they're usually crowned. But just for a laugh, just for something different to do, I thought I'd write a poem which would get the kind of review that you wouldn't wipe your bum with for fear of being contaminated. Write one for which the reviewers had only vitriolic hatred. So this is my offering to put in the bad poem section. I hope it gets added to many bad poem collections. But I'd like it to be known, I make my statement bold, that all my other poems are sheer, solid gold. Saucy chef. Let's get these plates out there, I said to the staff. We'll get this party of 45 fed. Then I heard a remark. A stripper's coming tonight. A stripper, I smiled. Don't get too excited, Jessie. He's not your style. Disappointed, I went back to provisioning guests. Finally, we got the lot of them fed and sat back for a well-deserved rest. Then the boss came up to me, flustered, with a very sad face. The stripper was too shy to strip to his jocks in a public place. The maid of honour's distraught, and the hens most upset. They're all going nuts. Can you do it instead? Oh no, I can't strip, I can barely dance. Of course you can, just give yourself a chance. With all eyes on me, I gave it some consideration. My boss urged me on, the girls will show their appreciation. Okay, I conceded, and they followed me down to the bar. This would be the best laugh they'd ever had, by far. Lady Gaga's song Just Dance started playing. Although shaking, I heard myself saying, "Are you ready for a show?" Not knowing what I'd do next. The girls' glum mood lifted instantly. Then they all begged, take it off, as my heart pounded so loud. My foot started tapping. I'd play up to this crowd. Leapt onto the table as adrenaline surged through my veins. Swayed my hips and backside. I had found my domain. In stripping mood, I seductively unbuttoned my chef's jacket. Heaven knows why these hens were making such a racket. I flung it into the crazed crowd and started slowly unzipping my pants, which I threw to the hen. She was trippin'. Up and down I paraded in my undies and socks, then strutted up to the hen, sizzling hot. I struck a sexy pose as the lights came back. The hens riotously cheering, they were rapt. You saved the night, declared bride-to-be Louise. No dramas, I replied, only glad I could please. And best of all, after having averted all their bitchin', I didn't have to help with cleaning up the kitchen. Size, rise, surprise! I wanted a coffee, so I went to a cafe in order to drink a medium-strength latte. I prefer to imbibe from a cup, not a pail, because I'm a human, not some kind of whale. I was a little concerned by their naming convention of tall, grande, venti. I felt apprehension. I'm not a small person, and I don't eat small. But I didn't want to sip from a cup christened tall. Is there one smaller than tall? I appealed. To not have one, to me, just didn't seem real. She whispered furtively, "We have a kiddie-size cup. Well, give me that, and from that I will sup." I'm not a kiddie. I can eat a big meal. So what is it with this kiddie-sized deal? It used to be called normal, as I recall, but now it's kiddie size. I call that gall. Spammed. I sincerely hope that this letter will not come to you as a surprise or embarrassment, since upon each other we have never laid eyes. I am deeply sorry if I have in any manner disturbed your privacy. Let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Christopher F.S. McGee. I was into currency exchange business, a British national from the UK. But I've been diagnosed with ossifical cancer, and it won't go away. According to the docs, now I only have a few months to live. I didn't lead my life well, never wanted to give. But now God has called me. Did I mention I was stupendously rich? and giving away all my money has become a real bitch. I gave some to my family to pass it on to those in need, but they kept it all to themselves in a show of unmitigated greed. I have $2 million with a financial institution abroad. I'd like you to help me give it to charity. Choose any of your own accord. I shall communicate with you, and of the transfer give further detail. Whatever your decision, I thank you for taking the time to read this email. A storm in a teacup. Jenny owns a little brown dog, as cute can be. But don't be in the vicinity when he begins to pee. He'd put grown men to shame. A fire hose looks small fry when he cocks his tiny leg and lets his waters fly. Such a dainty dog you'd think would just produce a drizzle. From his part chihuahua, part something else, pint-sized whizzle. But once the spigot opens to relieve the pressure in his urinary sac, the megalitres damned inside are rapidly unpacked. A microclimate is propagated, its chief feature a monsoon. A puddle was predicted, not a fathoms deep lagoon. And that is why we have christened him with an intention fond. Our super-peeing hero's bone-shaped tag proudly displays Big Pond. The auditors are coming. The auditors are coming a week from today. Everything that you can, please put it away. Those things on the shelf that have sat there for months, put them away. We're playing hide and hunt. The auditors are coming. They've boxes to tick. Don't leave anything lying around on which they can pick. Those innocent-looking tapes, what secrets do they hold? Only the whole financial record of the company's gold. The auditors are coming for audit type 7799. Are we compliant with all of the guidelines? Are we in accordance with every one of the regulations so all boxes can be ticked and we can have celebrations? The auditors are coming. They're coming today. Quick, hide that cable. Put it out of the way. The auditors are coming. They're right at the door. Oh, just shove the lot of it under the floor. The dining table. I have some friends, a man and wife. I'll tell you a bit about their life so that you can get a grip on what constitutes a relationship. I visited them a short time ago, looked down with shock and had to know why their dining table's smooth veneer, carefully protected for at least a year, with coaster, placemat for all food and drink. To not use such a thing would be unthinkable. Was christened with not just a little mark, but that there was an unsightly gouge in this bark. What happened here? I questioned Sue. But she seemed to have something else to do. I looked at Vince, but he turned away. No information would he convey. I needed answers, so back to Sue I turned. How this happened would be learned. Sheepishly she mumbled. An argument began. Her anger built, but she had a plan. To place her plate upon said table, with as much force as she was able, so that no damage would be done but still make a statement, and the battle won. But she didn't count on her husband's reaction. To be sure of complete satisfaction, his coffee mug had to hit the table hard, and alas, we have our table scarred. The eyebrow episode. Deborah was a little girl who didn't have a little curl right in the middle of her forehead. No, she had a monobrow. When people saw it, they went, "Wow!" and secretly they thought it very horrid. Her sisters mocked, her sisters jeered, until eventually, to escape their sneers, she asked her mum to begin to pluck the hairs which to her forehead hugged. Her ma began this mammoth chore. She plucked and pulled until she wore herself completely out, and feeling drained, had barely the energy to explain that the second brow would have to wait. She was all plucked out and it was getting late. Deborah begged and Deborah pleaded. 2 eyebrows plucked was what she needed. But all in vain. She went to school next day, her strange-looking forehead on display. The children mocked, the children jeered, ran off in fright whenever Deborah neared. When was that second eyebrow plucked, so that Deborah no longer looked a schmuck? How much later did folk not have to avert their gaze? I've been told the answer. It was days. The meadow. Fragrant with clover, flowers colour splashing, vivid and vibrant, although never clashing. Undulating gently, a stream has been added, and the meadow's surface with lush grass has been padded. At the end of the meadow is an orchard replete with crisp apples, juicy peaches, cherries so sweet. You want to partake in this bountiful feast, but you're very frightened of a brutal and fearsome beast, which you believe stalks this meadow, always prowling. You've never seen it, but clearly imagine it scowling. So you've never enjoyed taking a walk by the stream and picking the choicest fruit you could only dream. Until one day you realise this beast doesn't exist, and you realise on all of the fruit that you've missed. Then you'll walk through this meadow enjoying every stride and pick out the juiciest fruit, eating it with pride. The Rooster. Dear Mr. Rooster, I have never had the pleasure of meeting you or seeing you and your splendid feathers. But I do hear you early every morning with the sun rising low. That is when insistently and persistently you decide to crow. I live in the inner city and never would have dreamed a cock-a-doodle rooster was just not part of my scheme. Maybe it's time to seriously rethink your location and head off to the country on a permanent vacation. The air is clean and fresh out there. There's many hens, I'm sure you're aware. You can crow and crow from dawn to dusk and satiate your insatiable lust. It's Easter Sunday and I've just walked past your yard. I saw a grave with a small cross, and on the cross was stuck a card. and I'm not certain if it was placed there, ensuring I would weep because the words on this card said, "I died so that you could sleep." The sun. Look up into the sky at night, shining from an enormous height. Our stars galore, but not our sun. It's hidden when the day is done. Although so near, it can't be seen, it can't be felt, it has no gleam. Gone away, will it reappear? Oh yes, it will, as dawn draws near. Slowly but surely the sun will rise, always does. It's no surprise. In early morning it's just awoken, barely a few words has it spoken. By noon it's shouting with full power, got lots to say from its celestial bower. By late afternoon the tone is muted. Its strength could definitely be disputed. At sunset she gives one final show of reds and yellows, a glorious glow. Then completely disappears from view, so that nighttime can commence anew. The Unicorn Song, revised. A song was once penned by Shel Silverstein, had a rockin' rhythm, had a rockin' rhyme, and the words today could not be more relevant. I'm talking of the song about cats and rats and elephants. It begins, "A long time ago when the earth was green, there were more kinds of animals than you've ever seen." He talks up these beasts. Well, it's not a big ask. I cannot imagine how they could be surpassed. There were long-necked geese and camels humpty-backed. I'd like to add echidnas and the gecko crested black. Rainbow lorikeets, bandicoots and duck-billed platypi. Every one a treasure and far too beautiful to die. Some like to swim. Some like to swing. Some glide, some slide, and others love to sing. If we tear down their house without any thought, we'll be too late to stop the disaster we have wrought. Now, this song was inspired by the mythical unicorn. When the ark sailed away, it was left behind forlorn. And we could be left all alone and broken-hearted, because our magical fauna had all departed. The weather report. In Sydney today, it's 20 degrees centigrade. Humidity is 94%, and the light at 6:21 p.m. will fade. Wind blows from the northeast at 17 kilometres per hour. The moon is waxing gibbous, and Monday there's a late shower. On Saturday it'll be mostly sunny, temperature 17 degrees max. Thursday, UV's only moderate. These are the facts. Air pressure is 1,012 hectopascals, no longer measured in millibars. They use hectos instead of kilos. Yes, I also thought it quite bizarre. On Sunday there'll be morning clouds, which won't linger in afternoon. They'll drift over to Honiara, maybe take part in a monsoon. Waves will arrive every 7 seconds. Be careful their head height. And on Friday, 05:53 a.m. is the exact time of first light. Well, that's all of the weather, captured in verse. You'll have to weather it, whether for better or worse. They said he was really, really dumb. He was a little fluffy white dog. Well, more accurately, grey. He'd jump and he'd run. He knew how to play. Sometimes he barked persistently in the middle of the night. Like I said, his owners didn't think he was too bright. Monty would sit looking up, while a raging torrent of words flowed past him. For all we knew, he thought them completely absurd. But amidst all the cacophony, a single utterance caught his attention. He suddenly looked bright and alert, full of comprehension. The word walk was dropped ever so briefly and offhandedly. But Monty responded immediately and completely understandingly. Walk meant loads of fun, meant sniffing around, seeing nature in its glory, scampering over new ground, meeting old pals and stretching his limbs, twisting and turning at any old whim. Words like tobacco, alcohol, and ecstasy had no meaning to him. These words were easily lost in the general din. They didn't signify excitement or having bucket loads of fun. Sometimes I wish people had his kind of dumb. U-U-U-I-I-I-E. U-U-U-I-I-I-E. That's not fair. How can I display my fabulous flair? So you think YWKQZJX is better? Believe me, this is not a good string of letters. A few consonants and vowels is all that I ask, so that I am not given such an impossible task. U-U-U-I-I-I-E. What kind of joke is this? This game is not one that I'll reminisce. There's nowhere to go, the board's all blocked. Into Scrabble hell we've all been locked. There's double words galore way over there, but we've got all tightened up in this little square. I thought playing Scrabble was supposed to be fun, with letters like JXINAING, WTAIESR, or TOU done, placing them down on the board with elan. 7 letters at once, strategically planned, covering 2 triple-word boxes all in one go. Then you could just sit there happily and crow. But what's with this UUUIIIE? I'd rather be falling over and skinning my knee. Where are my glasses? Where are my glasses? Where did they go? I've searched high and I've searched low. I looked on the shelf and behind the TV. Where, oh, where can my glasses be? I've looked on top of the table, beneath the bed, inside the cupboard and inside the shed, beside the lounge and under it too. I went outside and checked inside an old shoe. I walked down the hallway and up the stairs. In front of me was a bicycle lying right there. I walked around it and jumped over the toys, left there by those most lazy of boys. I walked past a doorway, then crawled through a hole which led to a cupboard that only contained bowls. I've looked everywhere, under each and every bed. The only place I forgot was on top of my head.